as I said, Michael is here. What's Israel doing?
They're moving across the border. We don't know how far, but they've certainly created an incursion. And they're concentrating on Metula in the east. The border is 75 miles long. And it's easier to move in the western part of the border towards the coast because the terrain is easier. The further east you go, the more mountainous it is, the more rock you've got to deal with. But that's where they're most interested in because that's where Hezbollah's tunnels are. That's where a lot of the rockets come from. So they're moving, we think, towards Metula, and it will be tough. The Israelis, we're not sure what they've committed to this yet. We're fairly sure that the 98th Division is there, which is armoured forces, commando forces. That's their tough fighting division. It's probably their leading division. And they look as if they've got elements of maybe another 8, maybe even 12 brigades moving across the border.
Potentially 25,000?
Maybe. Some have said 40,000. I think that's unlikely when you look at the total number of armed forces that they can put onto the ground, actually ground forces. But I mean, something closer to 25,000 is more realistic. But that's twice as many as they deployed in 2006. When they began a war that lasted for 34 days, and then they rapidly had to reinforce to about 30,000.
What's the mission?
The mission, I think, will be to try to clear Hezbollah out of as far north as they can go. If they can get to the Litani River, then that's a natural stopping point. Push Hezbollah effectively north of the Litani. But that's quite a big ask. I mean, that's quite a lot of miles, and it's honeycombed with tunnels. Hezbollah, however disrupted Hezbollah are by this last couple of weeks, and they are very disrupted. They're at 6s and 7s, no question about that. But individual Hezbollah units have still got their weapons. They are probably in the tunnels. They will fight. It'll be more of a guerrilla war than anything more organised, probably. But it'll be a tough push for the Israelis. And interestingly, a high proportion of this force look as if they're going to be reservists. And they can only serve for 3 months. After that, they have to go back to their jobs, legally and also as a matter of economic common sense. So the Israelis will be looking to do something quickly and before the winter really sets in.
And the symbolism of the Litani River?
If they can push Hezbollah north of the Litani River and then disrupt Hezbollah north of that in the cities in Tyre and in Beirut, particularly in southern Beirut, I think they'll keep on doing that. Whether they go north of the Litani, I really don't know. That would be a big ask. And to be honest,
the Litani River is the UN resolution.
Yeah, UN resolution 1701 of 2006 says that south of the Litani should be a demilitarised zone, and it never has been. There's a UNIFIL force, a United Nations force in Lebanon, which is supposed to enforce it, 10,000 troops. Not doing anything. I mean, they're observers, and they observe. And they observe that the resolution is not being enforced. There's nothing they can do. And that's what Israel's point has been. Say, look, we've got a UN resolution. If you won't enforce it, we'll enforce it. And there's some logic in that, even though it will cause a great deal of suffering. And the Israelis will not stop attacking Hezbollah in Beirut and further north if necessary. Whilst the 5 million people in Lebanon, 1 million of them now are said to be displaced, and they're moving north, and that's going to create tension because the people who are being displaced from the south are Muslims in the south moving towards Christian and Druze areas in the north. That won't be a happy relationship if all these people are becoming desperate. So Lebanon is in deep, deep trouble, and the Israelis their action will make it worse, but the Israelis will think that they can do this quickly. I don't know if they can, but that's what they seem to think.
Just being told that the Lebanese Prime Minister has just said that the country is facing one of its dangerous stages in its history.
Yes, and he's absolutely right. I mean, he's been saying that for a couple of days, and he's right. I mean, Lebanon used to be the Switzerland of the Middle East. You know, before 1972, 73, it was multi-denominational, it was rich, it was prosperous, everybody loved going to Lebanon. And it was destabilised in 1972 when the Palestinians were kicked out of Jordan and they went to southern Lebanon and destabilised the country. And then the Israelis intervened in 1978. That didn't go very well. They intervened in 1982. That didn't go very well. Didn't withdraw fully until 2000. Intervened again in 2006. That didn't go very well. And what's happened is that and Hezbollah only become into force, only become an organisation in 1982. They are created by the Israeli attack in 1982. And so Lebanon has been increasingly destabilised, and it goes back to the 1967 war with the occupied territories. All the Palestinians were pushed out of the occupied territories in the area of Palestine. They went into Jordan. They destabilised Jordan. The Jordanians, King Hussein of Jordan, kicked them out in 1970. They all went to southern Lebanon, destabilised southern Lebanon. And Lebanon has been a maelstrom of chaos and confusion, sadly, ever since. And the Lebanese government has almost no power over anything. Lebanese army is the weakest force in the country.
Hezbollah are foot soldiers for Iran.
Yeah.
What's Iran going to do about this?
We think probably not very much. The Iranians have been making statements, even in the last 48 hours, that they don't intend to get involved in Lebanon. I mean, they are ditching their allies. You know, they haven't supported Hamas as much as Hamas thought they would. They don't look as if they're supporting Hezbollah as much as Hezbollah assumed.
But they're there to fight the war for Iran so that they don't have to fight it.
The Iranians, their policy has always been low risk, to use proxies to do for them what they want to do. So the Houthis, Hezbollah and Hamas. It now looks as if, I mean, this is what the Israelis are saying, look, if you really pressure these people, the Iranians won't do anything. They won't help. And that's why the Israelis think they're on a roll now. They think they've dealt for now with Hamas, notwithstanding 2.3 million people rattling around in a destroyed Gaza.
And hostages still being held.
And the hostages are still held. They think that they can hurt Hezbollah. They probably can't destroy them, but they can hurt them enough to push them back for a few years. They're prepared to take on the Houthis in Yemen. They're prepared to take on the militias operating on behalf of Iran in Syria and Iraq. And they think we are demolishing all of the proxies, and the Iranians are too weak to stop it. And in a way, they're almost goading the Iranians to say, come on, what are you going to do about it?
The $64,000 question is, what will Israel do about Iran? Because we heard the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, on TV yesterday saying,
threatening them.
Yeah, we've got you in our sides.
That's right. And he said, you know, if you try to attack us, we can reach you. And we've shown we can reach you repeatedly. We can even assassinate somebody right in your governmental compound, as they did with the head of Hamas, with Haniyeh, during the inauguration of President Pezeshkian. And so, yes, they are threatening the Iranians. And the Iranians are in a crisis, in a governmental crisis. And Pezeshkian, who's the president, the new president, is something of a moderate. He wants to get back on terms with the Western world. But Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader who has the final say, 83-year-old, he won't last for, or 84, I think, it won't last very much longer, but he is much more aggressive in his orientation. So there's a power struggle going on inside Iran, and the Iranians seem to be very reluctant to get pulled into this. And I think Israel perceives that this is our moment. You know, it's almost like we're almost a year away from the October the 7th attacks, the atrocity of October the 7th last year. And it's as if the Israelis, they've taken the hit and they've come back and said, OK, our existence is at stake. You thought you were going to make war on us as a whole, as a nation. We are hitting all of our enemies at once. And what Netanyahu's argument is, we have no choice now. All of our enemies are ganging up on us, so we will deal with all of our enemies simultaneously. Now, whether that's a good policy or not, it's the policy that keeps him in power. He's more popular now than he's been since October the 7th.
I saw that.
Israelis on the streets are very buoyed up by this. I mean, it might all end very unhappily for them in southern Lebanon. But at the moment, there's this sense that we, the Israelis, after a year, we're back on the front foot, and the Iranians don't know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it from Western eyes, we get the impression that it's a tinderbox in the region at the moment. But how powerful is Iran? I mean, they couldn't even keep a helicopter in the sky with their main leader on it.
Yeah, they've been repeatedly humiliated over recent years. What they have got is the nearness to a nuclear program. I mean, they've got enough uranium to make a nuclear bomb. They've got most of the weapon facilities and the warhead facilities. The triggering is the difficult bit. And they could probably produce a nuclear test in a couple of months if they wanted to. So if they wanted to shock the world, to say, we are not to be ignored, they might go for a nuclear test. They might cross the threshold, and that would be a new ball game in the Middle East. Not a very good thing. The Israelis wouldn't be too worried about that in the short term, because actually the Western world would then be outraged by what Iran had done, crossing the nuclear threshold. So, in a sense, it would unite a lot of Western countries to criticise Iran. In the long term, it'd be a very bad thing, because the Middle East will become much more nuclear. There would be proliferation in the region, nuclear proliferation. But in the short term, the Israelis wouldn't even mind that. And the Israelis might feel that they have got a chance to attack the Iranian nuclear program. Now, they wouldn't do that without American permission.
And it depends what happens on the 5th of November.
And they're not going to get that this side of the election, that's for sure. But they think that they've got some choices. So that if the Iranians felt that there's nothing they can do in the region, that all their proxies are being beaten, and that they therefore have got somehow to stand up to Israel and make a crisis of it, the Israelis might think that they can go for their nuclear facilities. But that would be a big, big operation, and it wouldn't be done without some sort of American approval, or at least American acceptance. And they couldn't destroy the nuclear program. They could damage it, they could set it back, they couldn't destroy it. Not now.